Ben sat in the shuttle, looking out the window as stars passed by. He wasn't a soldier, not a politician either. He was just a human psychologist, trained to study fear, trauma, and behavior. When Earth was invited to the Galactic Union, a small team was formed to attend the Peace Summit. Ben was chosen to observe, not to speak, not to interfere. The shuttle entered orbit over Zurl, the central world of the Union. Ben pressed his hand to the glass as the city below came into view. Giant domes, glowing roads, flying ships. It was beautiful, but he felt nervous, not because of the aliens. He had met many species before. What made him uneasy was the woman who ruled part of this galaxy. Empress Ziria. His handler, an older diplomat named Leah, leaned toward him. "Remember, Ben?" she said softly. "You're here to observe. Nothing more." Ben nodded. No, they landed near the assembly dome. It was massive, big enough to hold 10,000 beings. As Ben stepped out, he could feel the air vibrate with the voices of hundreds of different species. Tall insectoids, glowing plant beings, even giant scaled ones with deep voices. Everyone was dressed in formal robes or armor. Humans looked plain in comparison. Inside the dome, a tall platform stood in the center, seating spread in circles around it. Ben was given a seat near the middle, close to the stage, but far enough to remain unnoticed. He sat quietly, keeping his eyes open and his ears sharper. Then she arrived. Empress Ira stood tall, her skin silver blue, her eyes glowing like stars. Her presence was strong, almost crushing. She wore armor that looked more ceremonial than practical, covered in ancient symbols. Everyone in the room turned silent as she walked to the center platform. No one dared look her in the eyes, not even her own people. Ben leaned forward. He had studied body language all his life. What he saw was not respect, it was fear. Stiff necks, tight shoulders, frozen expressions. Even when Zaria smiled, her people flinched slightly. "Greetings, leaders of the galaxy," she began. Her voice was smooth and calm. "The Sarek Empire is proud to be part of this union. Under my rule, my people live in perfect peace." Watched her closely. He didn't see pride in her citizens. He saw silence, controlled silence. Their faces didn't move. Their eyes didn't blink as much as they should. They were still to still. As she continued her speech, Ben took notes. Not just words, but reactions. He noted the lack of applause, the strange rhythm of breaths, the way the guards scanned the crowd instead of standing at rest. He had seen this before, not in space, but on Earth. War zones. Controlled camps. Regimes that ruled through fear. Not loved after the speech, the crowd was allowed to mingle. Ben walked through the halls quietly, pretending to study the artwork on the walls. He noticed a small group of Zira's citizens standing by a fountain. They didn't talk. They didn't laugh. They just stood there, perfectly quiet eyes. Lowered, he passed by them and gently said, "Nice fountain, huh?" They didn't respond. A security bot floated by. And only then did the group move away from him quickly, as if scared. Later, Ben returned to the guest quarters. His roommate, a tall, feathered alien named Teven, raised an eyebrow. "You're quiet tonight." "Just thinking," Ben said. "You noticed, didn't you?" Teven asked. Ben turned. "Noticed what?" "Zaria's people, they don't speak. Freely. Don't feel freely." Ben nodded slowly. "How long has it been like this?" "Forever," Teven said. "But no one dares to question it. She's powerful. Her fleets are unmatched. Even her enemies fear her more than they hate her." Sat down, staring at his datapad. "And the Union accepts this. They pretend it's fine," Teven said. "Peace is easier when you don't look too closely." Ben didn't sleep much that night. His mind was spinning. He had promised to stay quiet, but something inside him stirred something stronger. Then duty. The next morning, a medical drone scanned Ben for routine checkups. It beeped and called for a nearby nurse. A thin alien woman walked in, holding a scanner. She wore the symbol of the Sarek Empire on her sleeve. Her hands trembled slightly. "You're from her empire?" Ben asked gently. She paused. "Yes. What's your name?" The woman hesitated. "Lara." You look nervous, Ben said quietly. Her eyes darted to the corners of the room. We are taught not to show too much emotion. It's not healthy. Ben frowned. Not healthy to feel. Not healthy to question, she whispered. He looked at her closer. Her smile was fake. Her posture was trained. Every response came after a short pause, like she was checking her words before speaking. Like fear was always behind her eyes. After she left, Ben stood alone in the room, staring at his own reflection in the polished wall. He had been ordered not to interfere, but he was trained to recognize pain. And now he had seen it. He remembered. Something his mentor once told him. Sometimes silence is more dangerous than truth. Tomorrow the Empress would speak again, and this time Ben would have a choice. Stay quiet, or speak the truth in front of 10,000 beings. Ben woke up early. The city of Zarel was quiet in the morning, the glowing sky still dim, but his mind wasn't calm. The words from the nurse, Lara, still echoed in his thoughts. Not healthy to question. It wasn't just fear, it was trained. Silence. He walked to the garden deck outside the guest quarters. He needed air. The plants here were from all over the galaxy, bright colors, strange shapes, each with their own scent. But Ben didn't notice them today. His eyes were on his datapad. He had recorded his thoughts from yesterday and was reading them again. Fear. Behavior. Delayed responses. Emotional suppression. Trained compliance. Every line felt heavier the more he read it.
Ow.
This wasn't just leadership. It was tyranny, hidden behind calm speeches and glowing robes. His roommate Teven walked out, holding 2 cups. You humans drink something called coffee, right? Ben smiled a little. I do, thank you. Teven sat beside him. You still thinking about yesterday? Yes, and more, Ben said. The nurse, her body language, her pauses. Even the way she smiled, it was all fake. It's like she was waiting for permission to feel. Teven nodded slowly. We used to call the Sarek Empire strong, proud, but we were wrong. It's controlled, stiff, lifeless. You've seen it before? Once I visited her world years ago, everything was perfect. It's too perfect. No laughter. No mistakes. I felt like a machine walking among puppets. Ben sipped the drink and stared at the rising light. If someone doesn't say something, it'll just continue. Then say it, Teven said simply. Ben shook his head. I wasn't sent here to speak. Humans are new here. If I speak, I could damage Earth's reputation, or Teven said. You could wake the galaxy up. Later that day, Ben decided to walk through the lower halls of the dome. Areas weren't as guarded. Many visitors from other species rested there, far from the main leaders. He passed by a small room where music played softly. Curious, he stepped in. Inside, a few young members of the Sarek species were sitting quietly. One held a strange instrument. The others listened. They looked around nervously when Ben entered. It's okay, he said gently. I'm just passing by. The one with the instrument gave a small nod. You heard her speech yesterday? Yes, Ben said. What did you think? The alien asked. Ben paused. Honestly. I think too many people are afraid to say what they really feel. The young alien looked down. We're taught that emotions are dangerous. Showing them too much brings punishment. Machines? Ben said softly. Maybe we should be, the alien whispered. Ben stood there quietly for a few moments, then said, You deserve more than fear. Everyone does. He left the room feeling heavier. It wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was a whole culture shaped by fear. And no one in the Galactic Union dared to say it. That night, Ben returned to his room and found a message on his datapad. It had no sender name, just a file titled Truth. He opened it carefully. Inside were video clips, secret recordings from within the Sarek Empire. Families forced to smile during state broadcasts. Children wearing emotion blockers around their necks. A woman speaking calmly while her hands trembled, and a guard standing behind her. Ben's heart dropped. This was real. He didn't know who sent the files. But it was clear they wanted someone to see. Maybe someone to speak. Someone like him. His door buzzed. 10 walked in. Something happened. Ben turned the screen toward him. Look. Tevin watched the clips in silence. When they ended, he said, "You can't unsee this." "No," Ben replied. "I can't." "Are you ready to speak tomorrow?" Ben's hand shook slightly. "I think I have to. Then I'll stand with you." The next morning, the dome filled again. Thousands of aliens gathered to hear final speeches from the empires. Empress Zero would speak last, followed by an open floor for remarks. It was usually quiet, no. One wanted to stand out. Ben sat quietly, but his heart raced. Sir walked onto the platform again, just as regal as before. She smiled, her voice smooth and calm as always. "We are the example. We are unity. Under my rule, all emotions are balanced. Peace is achieved." Ben looked around. Her citizens sat still. Too still. He reached into his bag and touched the data chip holding the secret videos. It was time. His hands stopped shaking. When the time for open remarks was called, silence filled the hall. No one moved, until one human stood. Ben. Ben stood slowly. Thousands of eyes turned to him. In the center of the galactic dome, every voice went silent. Even the soft hum of machines seemed to stop. The chair of the meeting, a tall, floating being from the Livac race, blinked. "Human. Delegate, do you wish to speak?" Ben nodded. "Yes." Empress Azira turned her head slightly. Her silver eyes narrowed, but her face stayed calm. Her lips curved into a faint smile, not kind, not warm, but sharp, like a blade hidden behind silk. Ben stepped forward. His heart was pounding, but his mind was clear. "I wasn't sent here to speak," he said, voice steady. "I was sent to observe, to listen. But what I saw, what I heard, what I felt, can't stay quiet about it." Some leaders in the room leaned forward. Others frowned. Ben continued. "I specialize in trauma. I study fear. Not just what people say, but what their bodies say when their words are forced. I've seen it in war zones, in broken communities, and yesterday I saw it again. In that. Sarek citizens. Zara didn't move, but her guards near the edge of the platform straightened. I saw eyes that didn't blink enough. Smiles that were too slow. Children who moved like shadows. Adults who checked the corners before speaking. That's not peace. That's not balance. That's fear." He paused, letting the words sink in. A low whisper passed through the dome. A few citizens from Zira's empire looked down at their hands. Others closed their eyes. "You're making dangerous claims, human," said a deep voice from the side. It was one of Zira's allied officials. "You insult an empire based on ... your feelings?" Ben looked at him. "Not just feelings. I have evidence." He raised his hand and tapped his datapad. The central display above the stage lit up. Footage began to play, not the clean, perfect images from official records, but hidden ones. Secret ones. The room watched a family sitting stiffly in front of a camera, repeating praise of the Empress. The father's hands trembled under the table. The mother blinked quickly as if trying not to cry. Another clip showed a young girl wearing a glowing collar around her neck. A machine beeped when she laughed too hard. A guard entered the room, and her smile vanished instantly. Gasps spread. Across the hall, a few members stood from their seats. Others turned to look at Zurj. Her smile remained, but her eyes burned. Ben let the last clip play. A quiet woman speaking in a soft voice. "We are taught to be still, to be calm. Emotions are corrected. Those who feel too much disappear." The screen faded to black. Ben looked at the room. This is not harmony. It's not peace. It's control. And it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. Because if we call this peace, then we blind ourselves to what real pain looks like. A long silence followed. Zira finally spoke. Her voice was still calm. "Perhaps, young human, you misunderstood our ways. We value emotional strength. Control is a sign of inner wisdom. Passion leads to chaos." Ben looked at her. You speak of control, but what I saw was fear. I've spent years helping victims of fear reclaim their voices. And your people, many of them, don't even know they've lost theirs. Zira stepped forward, her long coat trailing behind her like water. You come from a young world, emotional, loud, messy. We, on the other hand, are order. We do not need to prove our ways to someone who does not understand the cost of chaos. Maybe I don't understand everything, Ben said, but I know what fear looks like. I know when people are hurting. Another leader, a soft-spoken diplomat from the Brenner system, stood slowly. If these recordings are real, then we must discuss them seriously. This cannot be ignored. More voices rose. Some called for investigation. Others argued that the footage could be fake. Zira's allies looked angry but unsure. The unity of the assembly was breaking. Zira raised her hand, signaling her guards. But before she could speak again, someone from the crowd stood up. Young Sarek citizen, then another, and another. They said nothing. They just stood quietly, heads high, eyes calm. It's not frozen in fear this time, but choosing to stand a message. Silent one. Zira's mask cracked just a little. Her eyes shifted to the citizens. Jaw tightening. Ben saw it. This moment, this choice to stand it was the beginning. The meeting was paused. Discussions would continue later. Zira left the hall with her guards, not speaking another word. But her steps were faster now. Her shoulders tensed. Ben returned to his seat. Tevin placed a hand on his shoulder. You did it? I don't know what will happen next, Ben whispered. Maybe not, Tevin said, but you spoke when it mattered. And now the galaxy can't pretend anymore. The assembly chamber remained quiet long after Empress Zira left. Leaders spoke in low voices. Delegates checked their devices. Some whispered, some argued. But one thing was clear. Everything had changed. Ben sat back in his chair, breathing. Slowly, he had spoken the truth. But now came the harder part. What would the galaxy do with it? Tevin stayed by his side, alert. You should be careful now, he said softly. Why? Because when you pull the mask off power, it doesn't just fall, it strikes back. Ben nodded. He knew that. He had worked in dangerous places before. He had never stood against an entire empire in front of thousands of beings. A messenger. Bot floated toward him. Delegate Bennett said, You are requested in the side chamber by the Oversight Council. Ben stood, feeling the weight of every step as he followed the bot. The side chamber was smaller, more private, but filled with important faces, elders from the Galactic Union, security heads, silent observers from various species. The council leader, a soft-spoken being with crystal skin named Jarian, looked. At him, Your evidence has shaken this meeting, human. He must ask, How did you obtain these recordings? Ben took a breath. They were sent to me anonymously. Someone from Zira's empire wanted the truth revealed. He verified them. Yes, Ben said. I compared expressions, voices, movements. They're real. The room stayed silent. For a moment, Vengarian said, We've decided to pause all votes connected to the Serac Empire. A special committee will be formed to investigate. Ben nodded. Thank you. Mudjarian added, You must understand that this brings risk. Empress Zaria has powerful allies. She may try to silence those who support this inquiry. I understand, Ben replied. You may stay here under protection, Jarian offered. No, Ben said. I want to meet the ones who stood up. Today, her citizens. They're the ones who need to know they're not alone. Outside the council, Ben walked through the halls, guarded by 2 Union officers. Word had spread fast. Many aliens stopped and watched him pass. Some with curiosity, others with respect. In a quiet lounge area, Ben found them 10 individuals from the Serac Empire. They sat close together, their eyes full of emotion.
One of them stood up as Ben approached.
It was the young man who had stood during the assembly. Don't know me, the young Serac said. But, thank you. You're the brave ones, Ben said. Not me. Another woman, older and calm, added, We've waited years. We thought no one saw us, that no one would ever care. Ben sat with them. Tell me everything you want to say. No more silence. They spoke in low voices. They shared stories of growing up under strict rules, wearing emotion blockers, learning to avoid eye contact, how some friends disappeared after asking questions, how families whispered behind closed doors but smiled in public, how every movement, every breath had to be measured. Ben listened closely, took notes, not just on a datapad but in his mind, every tremble in their voice, every tear, every pause. "We need help," one whispered. "If she sees us now, she'll punish our families." "You won't be alone anymore," Ben said. "We're not going to let this stay hidden." Later. That evening, Ben returned to his quarters. A message waited for him. It wasn't from the council. It wasn't signed, just a voice message. "You should have stayed quiet, human." The voice was low, cold, threatening. Ben replayed it twice. He showed it to Tevin. "She's watching," Tevin said. "Knows you've shaken her empire." "Good," Ben replied. "That means she's afraid." But even as he said it, he checked the locks on the door. He set a security alarm. He didn't feel safe, but he didn't feel sorry either. He opened his journal and wrote, "Truth always feels dangerous. At first, but silence keeps people in cages. I won't be part of that silence anymore." The next day, a new session began. The investigation was officially announced. Union officers would visit the Serac capital. Interviews would begin. Emotional blockers would be studied. Public hearings were planned. Zur didn't attend. Her seat sat empty. Some said she was angry. Others said she was preparing her defense. But one thing was clear, her image was no longer untouchable. Ben watched as more Serac citizens stood up to speak. Small at first, then more. Some offered quiet stories. Others showed data. The galaxy was listening now. One older delegate from a peaceful farming world said, "We were always told to mind our own systems, but how can we ignore suffering when it stands in front of us?" Ben felt a wave of hope rise in his chest. All change came from war. Some came from truth, from voices that chose not to stay silent. He wasn't a soldier. He didn't carry a weapon, but he had broken something powerful, and that, he realized, was its own kind of revolution. Ben sat in the Union Lounge, staring at a newsfeed. For the last 2 days, the galaxy had changed. Across different systems, voices had begun to rise. Reports were coming in from Sera-controlled worlds, peaceful protests, messages of support. Silent gatherings where citizens stood without speaking, just like they had in the Dome. The investigation had started. Union agents were sent to verify the claims. Emotional inhibitors were being scanned. Private footage was reviewed. More evidence kept coming. But with truth came danger. Ben's security had doubled. He wasn't allowed to move around the dome alone anymore. Tevin stayed close to him at all times, alert and watchful. Union guards checked every visitor, every message, every delivery. Still, threats came. Anonymous messages. Warnings. One small explosion outside the guest building, no, one was hurt. But it sent a message. Zira hadn't spoken publicly since the day of Ben's speech, but her allies had. Many leaders loyal to her said the investigation was a political attack. The human was emotional, unstable, even manipulated by enemies of peace. One delegate from the Draylock sector said on the public channel, "This human uses feelings as weapons. The galaxy runs on order, not chaos." Ben watched it all quietly. He didn't answer back. Not yet. Steady worked. He spoke with survivors, listened to recordings, helped the council prepare a report. He made sure that what he said in that chamber would not be forgotten or buried. But deep down, he felt the tension growing. That evening, a message came through secure Union lines. It was from a Serac diplomat, a high-level official who wanted to talk. Ben met her in a quiet back room under full guard. Her name was Kaylin. Tall, thin, with sharp eyes. She wore the traditional silver robes of Zyrea's court. Was soft. "I came because I can't lie to myself anymore," she said. "I've seen what happens behind the palace walls. I've stayed silent too long." Ben listened carefully. Kaylin spoke of hidden prisons, of technology that could suppress emotion directly in the brain. of secret schools where children were taught never to feel too much or even dream too much. She says it's to protect us, Kalan said, her voice shaking. She says emotions are the first step to rebellion, but all I see is emptiness. Then help us, Ben said. Your words could help free your people. I will, she replied. But you must be ready. She will strike back, not just at you, at all of us. The next morning, it began. One of the Union ships guarding the investigation center was hacked. Its systems shut down for 7 minutes. When they came back online, half the evidence had been deleted. On the same day, 3 witnesses from the Sarek Empire disappeared from their safe locations. No one knew how. The council went into emergency mode. Protective units were called in. And for the first time, a strong voice from the Oversight Committee said aloud, "We may be dealing with organized suppression." Ben watched as fear began to return. Some Union members hesitated. Others whispered that maybe this investigation had gone too far. Peace was fragile. Perhaps it was better not to push too hard. Ben stood up in the meeting. This is exactly what they want, he said, to make us step back, to make us afraid. But if we turn away now, then the people who stood with me, who stood alone for years, will be silenced again. He looked around the room. We cannot be cowards. Some lowered their heads. Others nodded. Later, as Ben returned to his quarters, Tevin turned to him. You've made enemies. I know, Ben said, but you've also made history. Late that night, Ben stood near the dome's observation window. Stars blinked across the sky. Ships flew quietly like lights in the dark. He felt alone, yet watched. Every step now was heavy, but every moment mattered. A small sound behind him made him turn. It was cold. She looked tense. It's begun. I've just received word Zarea's preparing a broadcast, not to defend herself. To declare control. She's calling the investigation. An attack on her empire? She's going to spin it, Ben said. Make herself the victim. And once she does, Kaylin whispered, she may cut her empire off from the rest of the Union. Seal borders. Purge records. We could lose everything. Ben stared out at the stars. Then we speak first. By morning, Ben stood in front of a galactic broadcast sphere. It wasn't flashy. No music, no graphics, just him. One human voice. The people of the galaxy, he began. My name is Ben. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a hero. I was supposed to stay quiet. But I couldn't. He shared what he saw, what he heard, what he felt. He didn't attack Zira directly. Instead, he spoke of the citizens, the silent ones. It's the ones who finally dared to stand. This is not about politics, he said. It's about the right to feel, to laugh, to cry, to hope. We are not machines. We are living beings. And we deserve to live free of fear. He ended with one line. To those who still suffer in silence, know this. The galaxy hears you now. Ben's broadcast spread across the galaxy in less than an hour. On trading ships, in mining colonies, on peaceful farming moons, and inside the deepest city, Tower's people stopped to watch. Some cried, some whispered, others just sat in silence. The message was clear and honest. It didn't blame, it didn't point fingers. It simply showed what truth looked like, and for many across the Sarek Empire, it was the first time they heard someone speak for them. Within hours, smaller news stations on Sarek-controlled worlds were taken offline. Power flickered in several regions. Government agents moved quickly to block outside signals. It was too late. The message had already reached them. On one world, workers in a crystal factory left their jobs and stood in silence. On another, teachers paused their lessons and allowed students to ask real questions. In one city, someone painted a giant mural of a man standing with a data pad in his hand, Ben's image. Drawn from memory, and then Empress Saria responded. Her face filled the galaxy's broadcast channels. She stood in her grand hall, surrounded by her most loyal guards. We are under attack, she said calmly. Not by weapons, but by lies. By emotion used like poison. This human, does not understand order. He seeks to undo the balance we've built with care. But we will not bend. She ended her message with a warning. If the Union chooses chaos, we will step away from it. The Saric Empire stands alone. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The chambers were full. Leaders argued loudly. Some called for more proof. Others demanded protection for Saric citizens. One delegate from a distant moon shouted, "This is not about human emotion, this is about freedom." Ben watched quietly. He had said all he could. Now it was the galaxy's turn to decide what came next. Then Kaylin stepped forward. Her silver robe was gone. She wore plain clothes, her face bare. "I was born in the Empress's palace," she said. "I believed her, served her, helped her build the walls of silence. But I can't anymore." She raised a data crystal. "This contains records," she said. "Proof that her government uses neural suppression tech. Proof of disappearances. Training centers where even children are reshaped." A hush fell over the room. "You don't need to believe the human," she said. "Believe us, the ones who lived it." The vote happened that same day. By majority, the council passed a resolution, a full investigation, sanctions on the Saric Empire, and safe passage for any citizen who wished to leave. The reaction was instant. Zyrea sealed her empire's borders. She called the council traitors. She sent loyal fleets to tighten control, but her people were already rising. Cities erupted in peaceful resistance. Large groups sat in public areas without moving. Without speaking, statues of the Empress were covered with cloth. Messages were passed in secret, in song, and in shared glances. The galaxy watched as fear began to break. Ben stood on the Union balcony looking down at the glowing city. Beside him, Tevin smiled. "You didn't start a war," Tevin said. "It started a voice." "I didn't plan this," Ben replied. "Sometimes the truth plans itself." A group of young Saric citizens approached. One handed Ben a small crystal token. "Our families are safe," the boy said. "We're being moved to Union care zones. We wanted to say thank you." Ben took the token. It was simple, blue and smooth, with a single symbol etched into it in. "Open eye. Keep it," the boy added. "So you'll remember we're not invisible anymore." Ben held the crystal tightly. Weeks passed. The council built new systems to protect whistleblowers. More officials inside the Saric Empire stepped forward. Pressure grew. Zir remained silent. Her last message had promised strength. But strength built on fear doesn't last. Eventually, her own guards stopped reporting in. Her advisors vanished. And one morning, her grand hall was found empty. No one saw her leave. No one knew where she went. Some say she escaped into deep space. Others say she stayed hidden, hoping to return one day. But her empire was already breaking apart.
Not from
Weapons. Not from war, but from truth. Months later, Ben walked through a peaceful market in a mixed colony. Alien children ran past him, laughing. Music played from small stalls. He wasn't famous anymore. And he didn't want to be. He stopped by a stand that sold books, real paper books, rare in the galaxy. One thin volume caught his eye. It was titled, "The Day Silence Broke." He opened it. The first page had a quote. "I was supposed to stay quiet. Instead, I spoke. And that changed everything." Ben smiled, then closed the book gently. "You buying that?" asked the vendor, a small furry alien. "No," Ben said. "Lived it." He walked on, the token from the boy still in his pocket, and across the stars. In the places once ruled by fear, voices continued to rise. Not angry, not violent, just honest and free.